Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. Nice day, Monday. Good news, no new deaths over the last 24 hours. Total, we've lost 685 members directly of our community to COVID-19. So certainly we still remember the loss during this. 7-day rolling average, 0.9. We've been between that 0.7, 0.9, 1% range for well over a month now, which is good. It's much lower here in central New York than it is even in western New York or the Hudson Valley or Long Island or New York City. We're doing well. 76% of our cases today are under 40 years of age, and if we look under from 49 to, if we took into that 40 to 49 demographic, it turns into 82%. So the good news is over 50, which that demographic has had the worst outcomes with the virus once we get it, leading to hospitalizations and ICU stays, and in some cases worse. That demographic in our community now is getting vaccinated, and the vaccine's working, and that's really, really good. Hospital numbers are down to 38, and ICU numbers are down to 8. That's really good. So people are getting out of the ICU and going home, which is really nice to see. Vaccine eligibility, we started our 50 to 60 wait list last week. We activated that for this week, and the governor pushed up eligibility today anyway, so I guess we're still in compliant with the state. That's good news. Hopefully we'll take advantage of this. There's an ample amount of supply when you look at fairgrounds, you look at the pharmacies, what the county has. This week, some of the actual doctor's offices as well will be receiving some vaccine. So if you're newly eligible, or if you've been a senior waiting to go to your doctor, please call your doctor. We've been working with doctors' offices specifically, but now the vaccine is opened up to doctors' offices, some of them. So please, now's the time to get vaccinated. Everybody hears about potential variants and what you do or don't know. The best way to take care of yourself and your community is to get the vaccine. So we need people, when it's their turn, to step up and get that shot. Today I stopped out at Shopping Town earlier today. It looked good. So today and tomorrow we'll do the drive-through vaccination clinic. I think tomorrow we are opening up some more appointments for tomorrow. We saw how today went, made sure that we weren't running into any logistics issues with cars coming in and out. It's obviously a very big facility, so there wasn't any. So we've opened up more appointments for tomorrow at the Shopping Town vaccination site. So that will be for today and tomorrow. Reason is it's nice weather, and logistically, when we're doing large pods like that's a large pod, you need to match up your first and second dose days specifically. So we have some large second dose days this week. So we'll be back at the On Center for Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. When weather permits and the schedule permits, we'll go reactivate the drive-through site at Shopping Town. So Wednesday through Friday back here at the On Center. Appointments are open now. So again, we'll have thousands of new appointments each day this week. And please take advantage of that. In addition to that, on our waiting list, we now will open up the wait list to 40 to 50-year-olds. So if you're between 40 and 50, you can go to ongov.net and register, essentially pre-register. And then in the event, I don't think it will happen this week, but in the event that we have extra supply or have openings that 50 and above could not fill, we'll then email you and ask you to come get a shot. We won't waste a shot. So that will open up this week. Looking at testing again, we just need to be smart now. The weather's starting to turn a little bit. Sometimes people think they're getting allergies. I appreciate that, but we need to rule out COVID. So please test. Cayuga Medical is our partner at the FSHED, ongov.net/Cayuga Medical, Monday through Friday, 9 to 1. And then on weekends, up at Upstate Community, and you can go to your Upstate MyChart and create a MyChart account for that testing. But also asymptomatic testing. Please take advantage of this. Tomorrow we will be at the Northeast Community Center and the Lafayette Community Center. Okay, I think that's kind of a curveball. Usually we're there on Fridays. Wednesday we'll be at the Skaneateles district offices. On Thursday we will be at Onondaga Town Hall in Shove Park. And Friday, the Town of Clay Senior Center. So again, our testing strategy is we have 3 days a week here at the On Center, actually 4 days a week. But then we're out in the community in every corner trying to bring testing there so people get an opportunity. If you're symptomatic, we want you to go get a PCR test at the FSHED. One little news item. We gave out guidance related to getting kids back into schools a couple weeks ago. Recently, at that time, we were comfortable, jump ball, whether or not we felt partitions were absolutely necessary. We were comfortable giving guidance without it, but didn't want to necessarily conflict with previous guidance. We are comfortable now, since the CDC has moved on the 6 feet to something less than 6 feet without the partitions, but with mask wearing. So we will return many of the partitions that we ordered and keep some of them from some of our local vendors and use them. But in the classroom now, you will not need to have a partition, and so we'll update our guidance related to that for the districts. So we thought that was good news that CDC did a lot of different tests in schools. They confirmed what we already had confirmed, essentially that the transmission is not happening in the buildings, and many of the procedures and processes that have been put in place have been very effective with keeping the virus essentially out of the building. So that's something that we will update, but for these hybrid schedules that are now converting to in-person learning, they'll certainly be able to activate them when they're ready now. This won't be an issue anymore with the partitions. Saying that, happy to take questions.
Ryan, could you just provide a little more detail about the partitions? You said you're returning some, but keeping some. Is that based on school district preferences?
We'll talk to the schools, Tim, about whether they still want some in the cafeterias, and that might be an area. We ordered thousands of these, and so whenever we order anything, part of our process is we have 30 days to return an item. So those who are some of the vendors who are not local vendors, more of your national vendors, will just return those ones. Our local vendors, we'll keep those contracts and work with the districts that still want some for various things. We have workforces here that can use the partitions. We have senior centers that might want partitions. So we'll put the other ones to use that we order through some of our local vendors.
Do you know how many you ordered altogether?
We'd have to get that number for you. Thousands.
I'm wondering if you've had any conversations with Syracuse University about how to better control campus parties after the videos emerged last night of maskless hundreds of people on campus, knowing that Syracuse is going on to a subsequent game on a weekend in the evening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me vaccinate the kids. That'd probably be the best way to handle this situation, don't you think? I mean, so my position is we should be vaccinating the college students now. I'm giving you data. It tells a clear story where the cases are. This is, so let us go to where the problem is and stop the problem.
Well, the problem is behavior, and people have lived a pandemic for
Andrew, I would disagree at this point a little bit. We're a year into this. To think college kids aren't going to bend or break the rules, or that they're going to be militant at this point. That's not pragmatic thinking right now, right? So can they do better? Sure. Should they do better? Did they break their code? Yes. But is anyone surprised that after Syracuse wins a game like that kids, A, would be watching a game together, or B, that they would be celebrating? I'm not surprised by it. So those types of environments lead to risk, and the risk is that someone there had COVID, and then now potentially you have 15, 20, maybe even more people with COVID potentially. But the best way to eliminate that risk from the equation is vaccinating. And so I think at this point, where we are from a strategy, and again, this is not my call to make, or else you would be seeing a different strategy at this point. You vaccinate your most vulnerable to bad outcomes. So that is comorbidities in your seniors. The data now tells us where the biggest risk to the whole community is now. It's to the 18 to 40 demographic. So going out and vaccinating the demographic helps solve a lot of problems. It's very difficult for us to regulate physical gatherings. It's impossible in some cases. So to expect local governments to be able to solve these problems is not a good. That's not a great solution. It's very difficult. Look what's going on in other parts of the country right now, with people getting together in states of emergency. And even when you call a state of emergency, local governments weren't built to go, come in and deal with a lot of these situations, especially when the kids aren't really doing anything wrong in normal times. So will we talk to the university about other ways to potentially be helpful? Yes. Do we think the best solution is an enforcement solution? It's probably our only solution at this point. The best solution would be to let us vaccinate the kids.
You've already kind of hit on this, but yeah, vaccination is hypothetical. There's no way that's going to happen by Saturday's game. There's no way that...
Why? They could tell me tomorrow, go vaccinate them, and I will.
Do you think that'll happen?
I don't know. I asked for it. I doubt it, but let's not ask like that's not a realistic option. And so of course it's a realistic option. Tell me I can vaccinate them. We'll go vaccinate them. We have the supply, so I can't get to all of them. But from your congregate settings where kids are living the same way that people live in apartment complexes or senior facility complexes, we could get to those kids. That's absolutely a tool in the toolbox. It's the best tool in the toolbox. So if that tool is not being given to us because of the state of affairs where local governments aren't allowed to lead their local communities.
Well, it's not realistic to have them vaccinated and fully immune by Saturday. Let's right?
You get a level of immunity after you get a shot, Andrew.
What else can you do besides vaccination?
We'll have a conversation.
You risk the campus community. You risk Onondaga County's infection, right?
Yeah. We'll have a conversation. We haven't had the conversation, so I'm not going to talk about what is or isn't going to be talked about until we have it.
Brian, how much supply do you have this week?
We'll get over 6,000 new doses of supply. We'll have an ongoing. Remember, we're still dealing with last week's supply now, so you're talking about a situation where we had today's from the last week, and tomorrow's appointments are from last week's supply, and there's a little bit of hangover there. So realistically, we could probably do another 8,000 shots probably in the next week.
And I mean, if it were up to you, would you divert all that to the university?
I would. Yeah, if it was my choice, we'd go do the congregate dorms. Yeah.
Is excusing the behavior risking other more mature people from saying, you know what?
I'm not excusing the behavior. I'm being pragmatic. What'd you do when you're in college? If you had a good win. What'd you do? Would you go out? I mean, I know it isn't the 100-year pandemic. I'm not excusing anything. We need to be pragmatic in how we look at these things. I'm not going to sit here and scold these kids in thinking that that's going to be the best solution. Should they do better? Yes, they should do better. And do we need them to do better? Yes. Do I think we're at a different point in this pandemic right now compared to where we were the first time they're on campus and the first time we had an incident like this? Absolutely. We've vaccinated over 150,000 people in our community right now. We were over 42% of the adult population. So we're at a different place, but there's solutions to these problems. And it's an easier solution to go vaccinate them than to get 10 to 15,000 kids during an NCAA Final Four run potentially to behave different than they normally behave. And that's, I think most would share that line of thinking. That doesn't mean that there isn't risk with what they're doing. Of course there is. And what's their risk? Their risk is they get the virus or they get exposed. They're going to go spend 10 days in a hotel room, not in their home, which isn't probably too fun, as the school will have to quarantine them. So there's not an easy solution to this problem. The easiest solution would be let me vaccinate them.
Have you had conversations with the state about lifting the 11 p.m. curfew for the SU game on Saturday?
Yeah, I talked about this last week. This goes back to the local control issue. There's no reason why local governments should be being micromanaged with this type of decision. So I haven't heard from the state directly. I think the governor came out after we asked and did not lift the curfew. So I kind of took that as my answer. But again, it goes back to the people doing the work. This is normally a local decision, what time are restaurants and bars open. Look at our numbers compared to other parts of the state. I'm just mind-boggled at why these decisions are being made out of Albany and not out of the elected officials here who were elected to make these decisions.
Going off of Andrew's point of gatherings, isn't it easier to control people at bars and restaurants after 11 p.m. than everyone
Yes.
watch parties in their homes?
Correct. It's much easier to go into a business that has a real stake in following the rules because they could have their license taken, they could be fined, than, to Andrew's point, the gathering outside of that housing complex. That means that you had how many kids there? That means you have to put law enforcement officers in there to break up and disperse crowds. You don't like doing that any time in any situation because there's now more risk to the law enforcement officers and whatnot. When you have the commercial establishments open, at least you have them as potential partners to keep people seated, keep people from congregating on top of each other. The rules and regulations the state came up with within the facilities have worked pretty well when followed. So I would make that argument. It's better to have those kids all in an establishment following the rules than to be congregating the way that they were.
Friday night, during the game, did you have inspectors out to check whether the bars were closing
No.
at 11?
No.
So that's a change in priority for you. If that had been Halloween.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So would it be safe and fair to say that you think college students should be in the next group eligible for a vaccine?
I think anybody over 18 should be eligible for a vaccine. And then with our local allotments, we would go micro-target wherever we found cases. And if there was a clear path, a clear issue, then we would certainly, if there's another narrative outside of the obvious, we would certainly go and micro-target that as well. But at this point, I think other states have gone to 18 and up. The President of the United States has asked states to kind of wrap up the plans as is. I'm appreciative that went down to 50 today, but this will probably be a week's worth, maybe a week's and a half worth of vaccine because of all the supply. So being able to address where the cases are in the community and actually go in and vaccinate those demographics is really valuable at this point.
Will you take the names on the wait list, the 50 to 60, and go to them first still?
Yeah, so we sent them an email today telling them to go register. So they should be all set. Again, we open up slots for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and again, that will be thousands of slots. So I think the wait list got up to about 2,000 people, maybe a little bit more, so they should all be good.
And then if you just shift your whole strategy, the extra spare, hopefully they don't get wasted doses, do you create a wait list for 50 and younger next? Is that in the thinking?
Yeah, so we'll create a waiting list for 40 to 50. And same theory. that if we're in this boat where we have open appointments still a week from now, and we're in jeopardy of losing vaccine, then we would pull from that list.
The governor's worried about expanding eligibility because of getting the shots out. It seems like he's worried that, local governments and local places aren't going to be able to keep up with the supply. What is your response to that?
I mean, I don't agree. I don't know I speak to county leaders all the time. We were all in the same boat last week where we were all begging the state to open up eligibility because we had vaccine and we have people sitting around, but we don't have people coming into the pods or signing up for the pods. So our pods became less efficient because instead of doing 1,600 shots, we're doing 800 or 900. That's just not where it is here. Maybe he knows about something else that he's looking at from the statewide perspective. But I know in Mohawk Valley and Central New York, we all were in the same boat last week. We needed eligibility to be able to fill vaccine that was from last week's allotment. So certainly, if we open up, could you find yourself where there's competition for slots again? Sure. And would everybody get done in a week or two? No. But you at least it gives us the tools to go manage the pandemic through the best weapon we've had, which is vaccinations. So that's why we think you should open up all the way. Other questions?
Can you expand a little bit on what you saw today at Shopping Town? I know I was there, it seemed pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, they did a nice job. I don't know if you've been to kind of a drive-through testing site before, but somewhat similar. You come in and you get directed, and then you would go and get your paperwork done initially, and then you move to the next spot and you get that confirmed. Then you would drive up more to your next little station, and you would actually get your shot there. And then from there, you would drive around and then wait your 15 minutes, and we would have team members there making sure everybody was okay. So it was great. I know they did one of these up in the Mohawk Valley, and Tony Pacenti told me about how well it was received. We looked at the weather the rest of the week. There's going to be rain to really be able to do that in that type of weather. And next week, it doesn't look like it's going to be as nice. You need to have just more equipment that we just don't have yet. But I think it's a great alternative. I think once we get consistent good weather and we get some of this equipment, I think it will be well received and people will like that. So we'll work that into each week's process.
I'm just wondering if you heard any more about Friday night from bars and restaurants. Were there a lot of SLA agents out? Did they close?
Yeah, I haven't heard, Tim. I don't know if we were I hope we weren't disproportionately targeted by SLA because we had a game when, again, I don't think, maybe there's some science that I haven't seen yet, but I haven't seen the science that says at 11 o'clock you're more likely to get COVID than at 11:05. But maybe it's out there. I think could they have been out there? We weren't going to put our enforcement teams, mind you. Who's our enforcement teams? They're health inspectors, they're probation officers, in a position where we're telling hundreds of people to leave. Right? That's not a safe thing to do during the middle of the game, and it's not a practical thing to do. And again, a lot of where we are in the pandemic is we have to be practical about where we are and what tools do we have to deal with the situation on the ground based off of the transmission rates in our community, not transmission rates in New York City or Long Island or anywhere else. And so I don't see the effectiveness of the 11 o'clock curfew at this point. At one point, I certainly did. I advocated for it. Now I don't. I think it would be easier to have these students or anybody who wanted to be in that controlled environment than in house parties that then turn into gatherings on the streets where your law enforcement professionals have to go and break them up, which presents risk. We've seen how these things play out throughout communities. So certainly it all goes back to where we are, the pandemic, and at some point the state of New York needs to turn things back over to the leaders who were elected to lead in these crises.
This governor doesn't seem to work overnight with this kind of thing. You said you got your answer for last game, that the answer is no to extending or letting go of the curfew. What do you hope happens by Saturday? Is there an imminent call that will happen between now and the end of the week, or is it just kind of a dead issue until you hear otherwise?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect much. I think the state's worry is they're always worried about setting a precedent for statewide, because if you know, I don't think they did anything like this for the Buffalo Bills when they went on the run. I can't remember, but I doubt that it's going to change. I know that the capacity is changing, I believe, later on. But certainly it would make sense for the state to pivot off of some of their plans. I think they said early April they would look at it. We're probably talking, end of March, if they want to look at regions with positive rates and good spots to change things. They have all the data in the world to point to make that decision.
This has been pretty negative, but what did you think of the basketball team over the weekend?
I thought they were great. I thought overall they were they played great both games. You know, and they still got some players that have the ability to contribute more that haven't contributed yet. So I think I like our matchup going into Saturday night, and the bracket's kind of busted, right? So the rest of the bracket. So I think a lot of good things could happen over the next week or so here for Syracuse. And I think the women's team has a tough game against UConn coming up. So it's a great opportunity to send UConn packing. So overall, I think it's all good stuff. And why is this such an emotional topic for Syracuse? It's always an emotional topic in a normal year for all of us when we're talking about our basketball teams. But when we've been through a year of COVID, very much like Buffalo was with their Bills, this is kind of our professional sports teams. And so that's I don't think the state really acknowledges that. And so you gotta, and you look at where we've been with our data probably can't get better, quite frankly, from a positive rate until it's basically, you know, down to somewhat close to zero once everybody's been vaccinated. So if you're waiting for it to go from 0.7 or 0.8 to 0.2 or 3, it may never get there. So we've been here for like 6 or 7 weeks. So at what point do you still need to have these orders over local governments that have elected officials that were elected to lead in these crises? So I think that's the main frustration about some of where we are. Our businesses are hurting. This helps our businesses. The mental health in our community is hurting. This is a nice thing for the community to rally around. Let us move forward. And I think that's kind of our frustration. It's not with anything other than that. Other questions? All right, thanks, folks. We'll see you on Thursday.